She wrote an article about breaking her nails, I remember.
Yeah.
She broke her nail. It was like the most tragic thing that ever happened to her.
What, breaking her nail?
I always remember about her is
it's a strange short story. No, is it just
that one day she's at some social gathering, and a man goes up to her and he says, "Why, hello, Dorothy, how are you?" And apparently she didn't recognize him. And so he says, "What, you don't remember me?" "Why, Jesus, we were in bed together last week." And she says, "Since when does that constitute an introduction?"
Oh,
that's good.
Did she really say that?
Well, yeah, that's what they say.
Oh, I'll have to remember that one.
Yeah, it is a good one.
That is good.
Pretty smart, if you ask me.
I think it's great. You think it's smart? Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, she wasn't as witty as they make her out to be. She was really a shy woman, I understand.
Really?
That's what I hear.
You never met her?
Huh?
You never met her?
I never met her, no. I didn't travel in that set. I never was at the Algonquin.
Oh.
I never even went there for a drink. You know what I mean? I would love to have stayed there.
But you couldn't afford it?
No, I couldn't afford it. What the hell was my hotel?
Across the street?
Yeah. I had good people staying at my hotel, like Sherwood Anderson and John Despassos.
That's not bad.
No, I know it. I know it.
Was it a big hotel?
The Royalton. That's what it was. The Royalton.
Does it still exist?
No, it wasn't a great big hotel.
I never even heard of it.
And you know what was at the corner, or used to be at the corner, they tore it down, was the Hippodrome. Did you ever hear of the Hippodrome?
I've heard of it, but I
don't know. Never would, no.
Just recount that story again, Henry, about throwing your books overboard when you came.
Tell it again?
Yeah. We didn't get it on the tape.
I see.
It's a funny story.
Well, I guess. When I was coming back from France, coming back to America, I tried to bring back some of my own books, naturally. I must have had about 6 of them. And as I got nearer and nearer to New York City, to the port, I got more and more cold feet. They may put me in prison. Do you see? They may do anything. I didn't know what. So I go to the border rail and I throw them all overboard, which hurt me very much to do, you know.
Really?
But there wasn't anything else I could do.
When was that?
I think that's about, what year could that? That could be, say, about 1940.
That's when you came back to this country?
Yeah.
And the next book was The Air-Conditioned Nightmare, wasn't it?
Yes, when I landed here in America. The first book that I did, I went around the country. No, before that, there was The Cosmological Lie.
Oh, yeah.
Which was really based on another book. He changed the title, the publisher. It was Max and the White Phagocytes.
Right. That's right.
And he made it The Cosmological Lie. I was furious. That's another funny story. I'm talking now about the owner of New Directions, who was a millionaire's son, James Laughlin Jr., steel magnate's son. He had loads of money, and he had this publishing house called New Directions. And I always got a bad deal from him. He was always too cautious, too conservative, and too penurious, you know. Never gave me enough money, never treated me decently. And so one day I got very angry and I wrote him a letter and I said, look, I don't care if I never publish another book, if I can't ever find another publisher, I'm not going to give you another book. I'm not going to even write one. That's the way I'm going to fuck you. And so the result was that in a week or so, I was living in Beverly Glen here as a guest at somebody's home, down and out. He comes And he says, Henry, I want to apologize to you. I've done you a great injury. I said, yes, I know that. Why? What did I do to incur all this? He said, you didn't do anything. You resembled my father, whom I hated. How do you like that, huh? That was his whole excuse. He says, of course, it's no excuse at all, you know. But imagine.
Did you excuse him?
Sure, I could understand that. I hated my mother, you know. I hated her like sin.
Why'd you hate your mother?
Oh, for many reasons.
I mean, always hated her till she died?
Right up with her last breath, you might say.
You never forgave her?
Never forgave her. Never forgave her. Because the trouble was that my mother never forgave me for becoming a writer. My mother thought that it was a stupid thing that I became a writer. I should have been a tailor like my father. I should have inherited his business. You understand? And I had a nice business, could have made a nice income. Whereas I choose to be a writer. I don't make any money from it. Do you see what I mean? I'm in misery and so on. And that's all she could see of it.
Were you ever successful when she was alive?
Yes, I did become successful, but it didn't mean anything to her, no. It was too late then. Too late. She's already on her way out. But what was I going to tell you about her? Oh, yeah. Imagine this. This is a good story. I returned from France just as broke as when I left. I left with $10 in my pocket, and I had nothing when I came back. Not a cent. I had a trunk on which I was able to get a room in a hotel down in Greenwich Village on the strength of the trunk. Then I had to begin telephone calls to friends. Listen, I'm back. Can you lend me $5, $10, whatever it was, do you know, to pay my hotel? Now, I visit my folks during this time, and my mother says, well, Henry, how are you doing? Are your books selling? And I said, no, I don't have any luck. They're not selling. I didn't make any money. And then she stops a moment. She pauses to think. And she says, you know what? She says, why don't you write a book like Gone with the Wind? And seriously, huh? Yeah. Can you imagine that?
What did she think when she read your books?
She never read them. Neither my father nor my mother ever read a book of mine. Neither one of them.
They never read any one of your books?
Not one of them. No. No.
Maybe you were lucky.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Mm. You know, my father only read one book in his whole life, and you would never in the world would guess what it was. Do you know who Ruskin was, John Ruskin?
Uh-huh.
Do you?
Uh-huh.
He wrote The Stones of Venice.
Right.
And it's all about Venice, you know, and the painting of that period. And that's the book my father read. God knows why. I don't know what made him read it. But that's the only book he confessed to ever reading. Think of that. Isn't that amazing? To come from a family like that and to be a literary man, you know, reading all the time.
When did you know you wanted to write if you were from that kind of a family?
I had that feeling from the beginning, from very early on. In my teens, I knew I wanted to be a writer, but I didn't have the courage to begin. I was afraid of it. It frightened me. And I would always say, who am I? And I would say, there's Dostoevsky, Joseph Conrad, Gogol, Tolstoy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd go down the list. What have I got to say? Do you know what I mean? That killed me.
Well, how'd you start writing?
I started in sheer desperation because I had been pushed down so far that I was mad, like a man going berserk. And I started that Tropical Cancer in that mood. I'm going to fuck everything, everybody. I'm going to write just what I please, and I don't care what happens. Doesn't matter if it doesn't ever get published. And that's the spirit in which I wrote it. And that assuaged me.
Were you in the United States at the time, or had you gone to Europe?
Huh?
Were you here, or you in Europe?
No, in Europe.
Oh, so you had left.
Oh, I had left. Oh, yeah. Sure, I could never have done anything with a book like that in America.
So at first, what did you do in Europe? You just bummed around, or did you try to write at first, or what did you go to Europe for? Yeah.
Oh, I was trying to write all the time.
Oh.
I wrote many letters at first about my impressions, you know, of Paris, which helped me a great deal. No, but I went to Paris expressly to become a writer.
Oh, I see.
I felt that I could never write here. I'd been writing for 10 years here. Nothing was accepted, you see.
Oh, I see.
So I began to think, well, it's useless, hopeless. And I had been to Europe on a pleasure trip for 1 year, all over Europe with my wife. We had robbed some guy of some money.
That's how you had the money to go to Europe?
That's how we had the money, yeah.
How'd you rob him?
Well, in a strange way. My wife pretended that she was a writer, and she would show him my work and say it was hers, and he thought it was marvelous. But then they were only little stories and essays. He said, do you think you could ever write a book, a novel? And she said, sure I could. And he said, well, if you do, I'll give you a trip to Europe for a year. So she did finally present him with the novel, and he kept his word. And he gave her enough for both of us, you see. You know what I mean?
And what happened to the novel?
The novel got lost.
It got lost?
Got lost.
It'd be worth it.
All that was all.
Are you kidding?
I'm not joking. I wrote 3 books. They were all lost, the first 3 books. And it's just as well that they were. You know what I mean?
But that would be a classic.
No, because having written The Tropic of Cancer, no one would read those books, I don't think. I was still an amateur, you know.
But it would be an interesting way to see how you evolved.
Yeah, I know that. It would be good from a historical
right,
yeah.
Well, you've left your mark on the world, Henry.
Yeah, I know it. And that's why I get the Legion of Honor, don't you know? To come back to that subject.
That's right.
Sure, they know that, don't you know? Not only that, John, there's one thing you don't recognize, I don't think, that I owe a great, great deal to France. I think I owe everything to the first wife who pushed me and made me write and supported me. Then I owe a lot to Anaïs Nin, whom I met in the early days, who helped me to write and helped me to live. But more than anything, I owe to the soil of France, to the French people, to their way of life, to their way of eating and drinking, do you understand? And to the countryside itself, so marvelous to me. I traveled all over France, you know, just as I did America. And I love France. And I love the French people. I love their way of living, you know. You see, even if they didn't open their arms and embrace me and give me something to do, at least they let me be. And in America, you're not even left alone, if you understand, you know what I mean. You get pushed further and further down. You see, I was in such terrible condition here in America that I was panhandling on Broadway, New York, at night, waiting for the theater crowd to come out. And then I would go among them and then stop a guy and say, please, could you give me a dime, you know? Or I need a little something. Can you give me something? Sometimes I'd take my hat off and hold it out. You know that? And sometimes I'd come home with nothing in my hat or in my pocket. Nothing. I didn't make a goddamn cent. They could walk past me as if I were a stick of wood, do you know? And I was doing this for about 3 or 4 months. And the thing that cured me, I would have been a panhandler for life, was that one night, I'm coming back home. I got off in Brooklyn, near my home, and it's a slight drizzle. And I see a man coming along toward me with a top hat and an opera cape, do you know? And a cane, swaggering along. And I go up to him, and I give him the same story. And he never stops walking, but just opens his opera cape puts his hands in his vest pockets, empties them of all the change, nickels, dimes, pennies, threw them in the gutter. The wet rain, there's already a stream running. And I could have killed him, He never noticed me, never said anything to me, as if I were nothing. But he did all that, you see. Then I went to the gutter, and it's already muddy, and I washed the coins clean and put them in my pocket and go home. Then I swore never again will I ask any son of a bitch for help. I was cured.
You did, though.
No, after that I never did.
Never?
No, I didn't. No.
You asked your friends, though.
Well, my
That's a
friends
little
I
different.
asked all the time, but they
Right.
weren't much good. My friends didn't give a shit whether I starved or not. I had that kind of friends who would say, Henry, listen, I had a friend who we grew up together in the street. And then when he's 21 or so, he gets a nice job with the Minerva automobile from Belgium. It was like the Rolls Royce. He's in the saloon where they show the cars. He's the manager now of the place. I'm in New York, Panhandle. I've been begging all day to get something. And no, I didn't get anywhere. Besides, I didn't have the nickel to ride home in the subway. So I think of, Bob works near here. And I stop off at the showroom. I had 2 cents in my pocket. I said, Bob, could you do me a favor? He says, sure, what is it? I said, I need 3 cents to make up a nickel to get into the subway. Well, he says, sure I can. And he takes out a purse and counts out 3 pennies. I was so furious, I took my 2 pennies and his 3, and I threw them across the floor. I said, you son of a bitch, you're my oldest friend, and that's the best you can do for me? If I asked you for money, if you asked me for 3 cents, do you think I'd give you 3 cents? I'd give you $1 at least, you know what I mean? Huh? And years later, I come back from France, and I'm walking down my street where I lived, and who do I see coming toward me but this fellow? And I know it's him, but I look right through him and I walk straight on. And just as I pass him, he yells out, Henry, Henry. And I turn around. He says, don't you recognize me? I says, sure I do, but fuck you, like that. And I walked on. After 10 years or 15 years, you see? I could never get over that. Never get over that.
You have a long memory.
Oh, I like the elephant. I have the memory like the elephant for any injuries, yeah. Also, I don't forget a kindness either. But the ones who hurt me, I never forgive them. Never, never. Never forget, never forgive. Isn't that funny?
No.
Yeah.